Hi everyone, and welcome to this video on the Nine of Wands, continuing on the series, almost complete now. We had the Eight of Wands here, and that was under the influence of Mercury in Sagittarius, and we had this very quick moving energy which was named swiftness, which represented quick decisions, quick action, quick thought. We have a very different energy here in strength, and it's a far more enduring energy, and yet there is some contradiction here because there's the endurance of this card, and yet we have the very changeable and in flux type of energy of the moon, which is also strongly represented in this card. So we've got changeability and endurance at the same time. So I'll talk a little bit about that within the bulk of the video, but we'll now go on to the divinatory meanings of the Nine of Wands. So these are some of the applied divinatory meanings, and we'll have a look at a Celtic cross at the end of the video. First point I've made is that the client may feel exhausted at this moment in time, but there is the advice to stay with it, that they have what it takes to complete their goals. It may relate to a long period of study, A-levels, degree, or vocational. It can be related to standing your ground in the face of challenges, even though they may seem impossible to accomplish at the time, and to realise that these obstacles are just another opportunity for growth. So now is the time to trust yourself and continue until you have accomplished what you have set out to do. A situation which we have to look deep within ourselves, the moon being the subconscious. But we are assured we have what it takes to get through this period, and we will find more harmony and balance as a result. So that's the blending of this sun and moon, the conscious and the unconscious. So when we reach deep inside ourselves, we'll discover new depths of strength and power we never thought we had, and these will bring about more balance and harmony, very similar to the third point here. And there's also this very important point of flexibility to overcome life's challenges, and that's where the moon comes in. The moon is ever changing, and even Crowley says with regards to this card, change is stability. So in other words, if you're flexible enough, you can just go with the flow. So the tree that bends with the wind survives the storm. Further points: make sure you establish appropriate boundaries in your life so that others are not depleting your energy reserves without giving anything back. And make sure others are clear in how they can support you at this time. So there's no point in just giving and giving and giving your energy. There has to be a balance with people actually giving you something in return. And this can be in a relationship setting, a work environment. Lots of different spheres of life can be valid for this point. Recovery after a long period of sickness which has tapped your reserves of energy. And if you have any doubts at this time, which the moon can be attributed to, take confidence that you have what it takes to reach your goals. So it's this energy of the sun shining forth and giving you that insight to move forward. So those are some of the upright meanings. We'll go on to the reversed now. A lack of flexibility in dealing with the current situation. So we talked about the moon being something that moves fast, and there was the implicit idea of flexibility in there. So if someone lacks that flexibility to move with the times, then they may find life very difficult. Feeling overcome by our responsibilities and that we're not getting enough support around us to help. So this isn't a time to take on further commitments, but manage better what we have already and completed. Doubts in our own abilities and strengths are getting the better of us, and we need to recognise this, be more aware of what's going on, and reconnect with this inner strength and resolve. Reversed, the Nine of Wands can also mean swamped by our emotions, which are clouding our ability to draw on our strengths to achieve our goals. A relationship breakup, for example. And feeling as if our foundation, Yesod, which is a 9 Sephiroth, so our foundation is being challenged and that we don't have the strength to deal with the situation. When our very foundation is being challenged, it's like very much becomes a trauma, because our sense of self, our sense of identity becomes challenged, and it becomes quite a traumatic experience. It's something that doesn't just bounce off us, but seems to hit us at the very core. So it's being unable to find a way through a situation and dominated by sort of negative subconscious thoughts. Bad dreams, not sleeping, both of which can reduce your capacity to function through the day. So those are some of the ways in which the Nine of Wands is applied to a divinatory setting. We'll apply this again in a Celtic cross at the very end, but we'll now look at some of the other aspects of this card. A quick look at the Rider-Waite version of the Nine of Wands shows the image of a wounded man holding a wand here, and he's looking over his right shoulder towards the 8 wands which are close behind him. He looks as though he's already been through a battle and now feels threatened by these remaining wands, which are really very close to his space that he's occupying. So again, we have this idea of someone who has been through some battles, who has actually come out, or albeit with a few scars, but they're still standing and they're still ready to defend their position. So we'll now have a look at the numerology of the Nine of Wands. The 9 is the last of the single digit numbers and therefore represents the end of a cycle. I know in the Rider-Waite deck the emphasis is on the 10, which is usually a positive outcome, but that seems to not really be reflected in the Thoth deck. The number 9 here is closely related to the number 3. And that close association is reflected in the two sums here, where we have 3 times 3 equals 9 and 3 plus 3 plus 3 equals 9 as well. And also, another unique fact about this is the idea that if you multiply 9 by any number, no matter how large that number is, you'll end up with a number such as 18, 81, 180, that reduces back to the number 9 again. So how is that significant in the card? Why am I even mentioning this? Well, it's the fact that you've got this strength and endurance. So we have, in most cases, if you do this multiplication, the identity of the root number, the root here, which here is 9, the identity of that is diminished. But with the number 9, it has like a universal quality that shines through no matter what it's multiplied by. So we see that there is a resilience in the 9, and that quality bears out in the meaning of the card, which is strength and resilience. So even the numerology works out in terms of the meaning here. This quality of endurance has likened this card to climbing up a set of never-ending stairs, that just go on and on and on, and we're expending so much energy, and yet we still can't seem to reach our goal. So this idea of a long path, a long road forward, extends itself into analogy with the stairs here, which is very different from the electrical rays of the Eight of Wands, which are very short acting. Okay, I now want to look at the Nine of Wands in relation to the Tree of Life, and it's associated with the ninth Sephiroth here, which is called Yesod, which is ruled by the moon. So we have the moon in Sagittarius here, and therefore the moon is in a very comfortable position because it's in a Sephiroth rather, which is actually ruled by the moon. And this really represents subconscious or astral energy. And it collects the energies of Netzach here, which is emotional energy, and also that of Hod, which is of the intellect. So when this ninth sphere is mastered, we are free of the bias of Hod and Netzach here. And we become aware of the astral plane, which is what Yesod is associated with, and this can start with things like hearing our guides from within, from the astral, and it develops onto things such as pure consciousness, and then we begin to see the unity in all things, untainted by the personality. So in other words, our emotions and intellect don't get in the way, they're integrated and transcended, and we see more of a unity when we get to the astral. Crowley does say that the Yesod does have its disadvantages because it is quite low down on the Tree of Life, and therefore it's also to do with illusion as well, with people getting quite easily sometimes going off track with any messages from like the spirit world and things like that. But then its saving grace is the fact that it is on the middle pillar here with direct communication with Tiferet, which is our higher consciousness, our Christ consciousness, and that of pure spirit in Keter. In Yesod, Yesod forms the apex of the last triangle here, which is the astral triangle. So the supernal triangle is Keter, Hokmah and Binah, and then we've got Geborah, Hesed and Tiferet with the ethical triangle, and we've got Hod, Netzach and Yesod forming the last of the triads, or the collection of three Sephirah, and the energy becomes consolidated in Yesod. Our experience of the astral builds up over our experience of this life and other lives, and the vehicle for manifestation of these realizations is in Malkut here, which is independent of these three triads in the sense that it doesn't form a triangle, but it's like the pendulum of the Tree of Life, and it's the physical vehicle, the physical plane of manifestation. We can also look at the Nine of Wands in relation to the four worlds. So we have one Tree of Life here in Azilut, then we've got Bria, Yetzirah and Asaya, and Asaya is to do with the suit of discs, Yetzirah with the suit of swords, and then we've got the suit of cups here, and we've got Azilut here, which is the suit of fire and wands. So this is the purest of the four worlds. Sagittarius as a sign, which is what the Nine of Wands is associated with, has a lot of restlessness about it, but it also has a lot of depth and philosophy, and it craves that, it craves meaning, and the moon gives it this. It almost stills it down. Despite the fact that the moon is a flexible, changeable sign, it also has depth especially when it comes to spiritual battles, because absolute here is to do with inspiration, it's to do with spirit, that fire, the red that the wands stand for. So sometimes we may feel like a wounded warrior that's been through many battles, but we have the courage and strength to win the war, and also the courage to stand in the face of adversity, very much like the Nine of Wands as depicted in the Rider-Waite deck. So I've talked a little bit about the astrology of the Nine of Wands. Here is the decan wheel here, and we have the Nine of Wands in Sagittarius, and it's in the middle decan. If I take a close-up of that, sorry, this is a bit blurred, it's the middle decan here, and we have the middle decan which is ruled by the moon. So we have the moon in Sagittarius, so we have a double lunar influence in this card, because as we said in the previous section, Yesod, the Sephiroth, which is associated with the Nine of Wands, is ruled by the moon, and we have the moon that rules the middle decan of Sagittarius. So the moon is in a comfortable position here, even in the flighty sign of Sagittarius. In this next section, we will look at the Nine of Wands in relation to the symbolism that it contains. Unfortunately, it is a lot less than the major arcana, so we'll just break it down and see what we have. I'm going to start at the top of the card here with the sun. So the sun has 9 wavy and 9 straight rays. The straight rays are represented by the number in black, and the wavy ones are in red. So the number 9 is associated with the corresponding Sephiroth, which is the 9th Sephiroth, which is Yesod. And we also obviously have the influence of the sun on the moon here, and we have a central rod connecting the sun and the moon. And you see here this yellow line going down the center of the red staff here, indicating the energy of the sun illuminating the moon. So we'll have another look at the Tree of Life and see how that relates. And it relates to, we've got Tiferet here, which is ruled by the sun, and we've got Yesod ruled by the moon here. So we've got this connection between Tiferet and Yesod. And we'll have a look at the art card in due course, but that relates to symbolism and Sagittarius and the art card as well. We'll just have a quick peek at that now. This is the breastplate of the figure in the art card, and we have an arrow here, the arrow of Sagittarius, which is going upwards, and it goes into this rainbow here. So that's where the art card connects to the Nine of Wands, because the Nine of Wands is obviously to do with Sagittarius as well. So they're all interlinked, but I will come to the art card in due course. Looking further at symbolism, we've got the influence of the sun, or the conscious, on the moon, which is the subconscious. So it's bringing those latent or hidden powers into our consciousness and enable us to become more awakened, so we can apply this sort of knowledge to our experience in the world. The tips of the wands here have the moon, and we have 8 further crescent moons on the staffs. So we have the 1 here plus the 8 here, which is the number 9, which again corresponds to the rays of the sun here, and the Sephiroth Yesod that this card relates to. The arrows are red, the colour of the fiery sign of Sagittarius. There are 10 flames in the background here, which relates to Malkut on the Tree of Life here, this final Sephiroth here, which is somewhat distant from the rest of the tree here. It's the earth plane, the physical, and it's all about grounding these realizations and making them real for us. So it's that bridge between the astral and the physical. I think the only other thing to mention is that the glyphs here, the moon and Sagittarius, are both at the bottom of the card rather than one being at the top and the other being at the bottom, which is what the convention is. So we'll now move on to the application of the Nine of Wands to a Celtic cross. We'll look at the card in the very first position. So if the Nine of Wands comes through in position 1 here, the dominant energy of the spread, then we have a situation in hand which is testing us to the limit, using all our resources. Could be a work environment, could be relationship, or even a family environment, depending on the question that the querent has asked. Position number 2, obstacles, challenges. In other words, this card here crosses the first card, feeling as if we don't have the energy to get through the situation, and therefore, maybe a client is feeling quite depressed that something is just overpowering them at the present time. So we need to find a way in the reading to give them a path through the current situation at hand. If the Nine of Wands occurs in position 3, which is subconscious influences, it could mean that our habits of thinking and acting are stored in our subconscious, so we may not be completely aware of them. Maybe a plan for positive thoughts and affirmations will support our strength and determination to succeed. So it's exchanging those negative patterns for positive ones and then acting upon them. Position 4, which is the recent past affecting the present. So that if the Nine of Wands appears here, it could be a period where we feel we've again been tested to the limit, but we've come through it. We've found our inner strength to get through it. It may have been a testing time, but we may have forgotten about that and need reminding of that, and therefore in doing the reading we can reassure the client that they've had the resources in the past to overcome quite challenging situations, and therefore they can do it again. Position number 5 is to do with hopes and goals here, and it does relate to the number 10 card here. So it's to live a life that plays to our strengths and helps us to grow as a person, and also spiritually. Life is very complicated, and sometimes we just need to get back to basics and say, well, what are our strengths? What really turns us on in life? What gives us that spark to keep us going? Let's follow that path rather than what society may dictate, and that will get us back on track to being ourselves again. So we now have the Nine of Wands in the position number 6, immediate future. So it could be a situation in the client's life where they feel things are likely to become very demanding of their time and resources, and they may be actually worried about that. Position number 7, how they're handling a situation. If the card is reversed, I'll just add a reversal here. So it could be feelings of doubt and insecurity surrounding the client, that they've got the resources to deal with this situation, which is really draining them. And we need to give them the ability to see through that they've either got the strength to turn that situation around into something else which is working for them, or the fact that they've just got the energy to succeed and keep on going to achieve their goal. Position number 8, their external environment, how others are affecting your situation. People may view you as being strong-willed, resourceful. You might have a job that's very demanding of you, and people recognise that you have the staying power to keep up with those demands. Moving on to position number 9 here, guidance and warning. This brings up another aspect of the Nine of Wands, and that's the need to set boundaries of what you can accomplish given your time and energy resources, and make sure that others are not just simply taking your energy and draining you, but also supporting you in some way. So it's a little bit like the Four of Discs, where you've got the Tower, the castle situation, which is all about setting boundaries. And finally, the Nine of Wands in position number 10. Developing confidence in yourself that you have the tenacity and strength to accomplish what you set out to do. So it's very important for self-growth and belief. I wish, when I was doing my uni degree, I had a lot more positive encouragement and feedback. It would have helped a fair bit. So that's the final long-term outcome, which is positive, and it's giving the client a feeling of empowerment that they have the resources to overcome whatever stands in their way. Okay, so that's it for this particular card. We'll move on to the last card, the Ten of Wands in this particular suit, and then go on to the Cups.